In the year 494, 1101 in the calendar of the Franks, when the armies of Shaitan marched forth following the catastrophe unleashed upon the world by the opening of the gate to Jahannam, the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt hastily mustered their forces to counter this threat in the Levant. The Fatimids' force marched across the desert in a desperate bid to protect the two holy places of Islam, but their bravery was to no avail. The army of Cairo marched into an ambush, after the elite Batilis cavalry became separated from the main force and lost contact with the commanders. Every night, they were picked off by a Farit of the waterless places. The weakened army was then assaulted from three sides. The Caliph himself fell in battle, with all of the Hudayjiyah bodyguards killed around him, and the servants of Satan built grotesque monuments from their dismembered remains. The war alone did not weaken the realm. News came through envoys from the east, declaring that the Iron Wall of Iskander was given as protection of humanity by the grace of Allah, and all those who believe were called upon to travel to the lands it protects. Many heeded the summons, but not all. Some feared the trek across lands held by the foul servants of Shaitan, while others loved their lands and argued the call was not a divine commandment, but rather a dangerous undertaking for a dubious benefit. Nevertheless, Egypt lost a great deal of its population to a mass migration. The Fatimid Caliphate was so weakened by the loss of their best troops, as well as the great exodus of people seeking refuge behind the Iron Wall, that central authority collapsed, casting the realm into chaos and leaving Egypt wide open to enemy invasion. In this dark hour, the Mamluks, an elite slave warrior caste of the Fatimids, stepped forth and claimed the empty throne, reorganizing the weakened Egypt into a Mamluk Sultanate, and aggressively hiring Tuareg and Berber warriors to replenish the decimated army. The Mamluks refused to leave Egypt and their hard-won independence, despite the renewed calls from the Iron Sultanate to migrate to safety within the Iron Wall. Instead, the Mamluks prepared to defend their home. In the Battle of Bir al-Abed, the Mamluks stopped the heretic forces at the edge of Sinai, preventing the entry of Shaitan's forces into Egypt proper. Hope elated the populace, who saw the victory as a sign that the ever-providing one had decreed that the Mamluk Sultanate would be just as safe as the Iron Wall for those who believe. In the following years, Cairo's Dar Alim, the famous rival to Baghdad's own fabled House of Wisdom, developed the first of the legendary automaton horses, which combined metals from the Iron Wall and orichalcum alloys bought from the Franks at great expense. Needing no water and never tiring, these magnificent artificial war steeds enabled the Mamluks to contest the Sinai Desert on an even footing with their allies from Jahannam and their heretic foes. Eventually, the heretic lords turned their gaze elsewhere and went on to conquer lands in Eastern Asia beyond the Iron Wall, and the Mamluks were given a respite to organize their realm and marshal its defenses. The relationship between Cairo and New Damascus remained cordial yet cool, and as the Sultan of the Iron Wall never claimed the title of Caliph, the Mamluks maintained a policy of ambiguous sovereignty, never recognizing the suzerainty of the Iron Sultanate. With the great loss of life to wars and the migration to the safety of the Iron Wall, the Mamluks turned to the peoples of the lands beyond Egypt. Nubians, Berbers, and Tuareg were recruited in large numbers to bolster the decimated army, and heavy taxes were placed on traders to fund the nation under duress. This led to resentment amongst the merchant class, which would come to bear bitter fruit in the future. The vital Mediterranean trade remained a lifeline for the Mamluk Sultanate, and with the Levant overrun by heretics, the eastern borders were so shortened that they were easier to defend. The port city of Alexandria, the source of Egypt's wealth, was fortified and the fleet was modernized, with the citadel of Quet Bay ensuring the safety of its famed harbour. And so the power of Mamluk Egypt grew for the next few centuries. Along with foreign trade, the power and influence of the merchant princes also grew, and many of the people of the Sultanate fell into deep debt, forced into uneven contracts, often signed away from the prying eyes of the Gadi. Eventually, the merchant alliances grew a power base of their own within the Mamluk realm. A strangling web of death and poverty ensnared many, with desperate men and women signing contracts that they did not understand or could even read. Occupied with military matters and reliant on the funds and supplies provided by trade and the merchants, the Mamluks did not uncover the rot within their own realm in time. And as the night fell, the merchants who chafed under the rule of the warriors found a new master. Mammon, Hell's great king of greed. And Egypt was doomed. Alrighty, so the recent drop was kind of broken out into two parts, so I'm going to be doing it in two different videos. Basically, that's just the way I want to do it. It's a really fun bit of lore about how we know there's obviously been like some pretty large historical changes in different parts of the world, and one of the biggest ones in Trench Crusade that we've been kind of waiting for information on is how Mammon has been acting in Africa, because we know the guy is just like obsessed with getting all the wealth of Egypt, and now we're kind of finding out how he actually went about doing that. So there's quite a few terms in this one that I probably butchered, and my bad, but that's just the way it is. And there's a lot of stuff I had to like kind of look up and find little bits and pieces of that are quite interesting. So we'll go through them, and please, the people who are more educated about this kind of thing, feel free to like leave comments in the comment section and add more information. That's where the real meat is, folks. The good stuff is always in the comments. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, this is kind of one of the more basic things, I guess. But the two holy places that are mentioned at the start, they're basically Mecca and Medina, which are the holiest sites in Islam. And there's kind of a consistent bringing up of those two places within the lore in Trench Crusade. We know that they are like closed off currently by storms. The common consensus seems to be that those storms are designed to protect those places, but I remain uncertain on that. So that's just me though. Okay, the Fatimid Caliphate extended from 909 to 1117, covering large amounts of North Africa and West Asia, and they went from the Western Mediterranean to the Red Sea in the east, and they traced their ancestry to Fatima, who's apparently the daughter of Muhammad, and Ali, the first Shia Imam. So that's kind of what is essentially being nuked by this upheaval in the Trench Crusade universe. You know, that's what's kind of going missing essentially. At this part, they're the ones feeling that initial brunt of the opening of the gate and having their society slowly but surely collapse essentially because of all this stuff. So the year 494 versus what we would call, it's referred to in the lore as the calendar of the Franks, 1101, is because the Muslim calendar is different. The Hijri or lunar calendar ensures that religious observances rotate through all seasons over the course of a 33-year cycle, and it began when the Prophet Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina. Now, once again, I'm super open to anybody who knows more about that stuff dropping some knowledge in the comment section. The Ifrit, or Afirit, or I'm unsure, I'm going to go with Ifrit, I think, often seen as a type of powerful jinn. Remember, these guys are mentioned as taking apart essentially the loyalist troops, the faithful troops, in the nighttime, and referred to as like the waterless places, basically the deserts. So they're often seen as mischievous and evil, IRL, but also highly intelligent, and it wouldn't be a reach to think that these powerful beings could take down the warriors, but it's open to interpretation if you think that they're legitimately the Ifrit, or if they're actually the creatures of hell who have come through the gate. That's really up to you. Trench Crusade kind of does this from time to time, and I quite like it, where it hints that these kind of folklorish and mythic beasts can often be very much real, and actually the demons of hell who are like slipping through little cracks in creation throughout the history of man. And it's just really cool. I like it. It's one of my favorite part of the overall lore of Trench Crusade. Okay, so the Hujaria. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that, but it's all good. That means the men of the chambers, and they were an elite cavalry corps that was part of the Abbasid army, and they were disbanded in 936. There's a kind of a point of divergence in Trench Crusade here, as they obviously still exist in 1101 and continue to exist for a while, at least for a little while after the gate is opened. So IRL, their story is actually really interesting, and it's way too long to go through here, but I would suggest reading up about it. They mostly acted as bodyguards for the Caliph in Baghdad, and they would eventually become a very powerful element in both the military structure and overall society. They would have a lot of sway and a lot of say, and this would eventually see them fall foul of the very same tumultuous politics that they chose to involve themselves in, and they were kind of led into their doom. So it's super interesting, and I think we're reading about how that went down in real life, and it's kind of a fun echo. I think Tuomas likes to do this stuff from time to time, where he tries to echo how things went in the real world, like when people fall foul of the worst parts of human nature. He kind of likes to try and replicate how that happened a little bit, kind of poetically sometimes, in the lore. Bir al-Abed, I had no idea where that was, I'm not going to lie. It's one of the cities of North Sinai, and it's in the northeast of Egypt. So, there you go. Pretty much right up there. Would have been the first places anything coming through from the sea there would have gotten to. Now, my favorite part of this week's drop, well, the first part of this week's drop, I was a bit confused because the Tuareg are Berbers, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to learn more about this. But there's a mention of hiring both Berbers and Tuareg, and basically Tuareg are a very specific element of what was the Berber Confederation, I guess. So the Berbers are indigenous people of North Africa, spanning from Morocco and Algeria across to Egypt and down into the Sahel. The Berber is just an umbrella term, basically covering dozens of distinct ethnic groups and languages and cultures. Historically, Berber warriors were known across the ancient and medieval world, and they fought as cavalry and infantry for places like Carthage and Rome. So the Tuareg are a very specific part of the Berbers, and they traditionally inhabit the central and southern Sahara, places like Mali and Niger and Algeria and Libya, and they were just kind of really, really, really specialized in desert warfare traditions and things like that, built around camel cavalry apparently, and camel-mounted raiding. I would pay good money for camels in Trench Crusade, I'm not gonna lie. So they used to wear a face veil, which I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation of it, but the men would wear a face veil apparently, and it was a cultural marker that distinguishes them from the other Berber groups. Now, I've no idea how completely accurate that is. This is like my research here, so people who are legitimately, genuinely very learned in this stuff, sound off in the comment section. They were masters of raid and retreat tactics across vast desert distances, and they carried a straight sword, and they were expert spear fighters. And they controlled trans-Saharan trade routes through a combination of trade and coercion, which is my favorite combination. So yeah, I just think that's really cool. I think it fits in so perfectly with Trench Crusade and what you would need to be to survive in the world of Trench Crusade, and the foundational elements of how they are and who they are and how they operate is really, I reckon, what probably drove the concept of how the Mamluks would be represented in the world of Trench Crusade more than almost anything else. But that's just an assumption that I'm making. Okay, so I came across a word in this, which I'll be honest, I had never heard of before in my entire life. And I'd like to think I'm reasonably well read. And I'd never heard of it before. And I literally heard this shit twice in a week. Suzerainty. Suzerainty. Yeah, let's just say suzerainty. I checked up how to pronounce it earlier, but I almost instantly forgot that shit. So this is a form of hierarchical relationships, basically, where there's like a dominant state, the suzerain, controls foreign affairs and international relations of what would be perceived as a weaker, formerly subordinate state, or a vassal state, which retains limited domestic autonomy. Now, I'd literally, swear to God, never heard of that shit before, and it came up in this lore, and it came up in a book I was reading called Where the Axe is Buried by Ray Naylor, which is a fantastic sci-fi book, and I would recommend giving it a read if you want to. Anybody who's read it, let me know what you think of it in the comment section below. Okay, the Citadel of Quat Bay is mentioned. That's a 15th century, 30-meter high defensive fortress located on the Mediterranean coast in Alexandria, Egypt. And it was designed as a vital defensive stronghold against the Ottoman Empire. And it features towers and all kinds of cool shit. So yeah, that's pretty cool. We can assume that gets the Trench Crusade treatment, and what I refer to as the Trench Crusade treatment is a scaling up of the fucking awesomeness of things. Basically, this is what I've learned about Trench Crusade. Take something dope and make it doper, and really kind of scary and practically impossible to produce in reality, and you're about where you gotta be for things in Trench Crusade. And then there's a mention of the people signing contracts away from the eyes of the Gadi, and that's basically just the magistrates or judges, people who might, were they so inclined, be on the side of the person signing the contract, or be able to help them or assist them understanding the nuance of their jurisprudence or legal system, and stop them from signing their souls over to Mammon, perhaps. But yeah, this is, like, overall, I think it's a really cool piece of lore. I really like knowing that things didn't instantly just, like, fall apart in different parts of the world. That there was a power vacuum, and that vacuum was filled by human intent and the human spirit to have something and to survive and to be strong, rather than just running away behind the wall with everybody else. These dudes were like, nah, we're going to give it a fucking shot here. We're going to see if we can make this work. And they did for centuries, which is pretty interesting. And yes, I also love the fact that the rot that takes it down is slow and creeping, because that's how civilizations fall. They don't fall instantaneously. They fall over time. You notice, or will notice, a stepping away from many of the tenets that made them great in the first place, an inability to be honest with themselves on a social and political level, a complete inability for self-examination and to face up to the truth of their weakness and things like this are all tend to be present pre the collapse of many civilizations throughout history. And that is certainly what is happening here. And were they able to take a step back from the need to constantly push towards being strong, they might have seen the weakness within. And I really like that. So over the weekend, I will drop part 2. And we'll break down some more lore and all the rest of it. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching. I hope you're having a wonderful time. Remember to like the video only if you actually like the video, and curate your subscriptions feed and keep your YouTube AI slop free. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.